Hi, I'm frustrated. My frustration level is up to here. I have been involved in, um, not involved, let me just put it this way. I, in my research, found a listserv called Downtown Raleigh. It's a community, it has a lot of different threads on it, and I've been watching one on new construction on New Bern Avenue because I live a block away. And I decided to respond because, for those of you who don't know, the rezoning development that we've been concerned about at the corner of New Bern and Battery and Pool and Bart Streets, they pulled their request for rezoning last week because the missing middle text change that was adopted in May will go into effect in August, and they can build what they wanted to build without a rezoning. So somebody on the thread asked what had happened to the rezoning. Had they seen anything else about it? And somebody said something about the NIMBYs, and you should have watched the the meetings that were online with the Planning Commission. And then, there's been this whole conversation about being a NIMBY. If you don't know what a NIMBY is, it's not in my backyard. So I finally responded to that thread and I said, no, this was not a case of not in my backyard, and I listed the things that the community was concerned about. So then that became, oh, well, the fact that you listed all these concerns means that you didn't want it developed anyway. Well, that's not true either. We just didn't want 40 apartment units. And there were some other issues that came up as we were dealing with this. So it was a concern. But the whole thread has been pushback against me for having any concerns that we just need to let it happen. It's already been funded. I mean, the BRT has already been funded. And the fact that I think one person said, I think you're trying to be, I've forgotten what the word was, but he at least seemed to understand that I wasn't trying to push back. I was trying to share our reasons for our concerns. We didn't have concerns about, if it was the price of tea in China, we didn't want it. We didn't have any of those snarky comments that were made all across this thread and have been coming on this thread for 6 days now. And what really comes to my mind is that, black people haven't had a choice about what they've had for so long. And a lot of properties that get sold in the black neighborhood are not necessarily owned by somebody black. They may not have ever been owned by somebody black. But it's always pretty much been what the person who owned it wanted to do. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem with now people coming into the black community, the area of Raleigh that literally has been set aside since slavery ended for black people to live in. Some people have been able to get out. Some people have been able to move into other parts of the city, and some people have moved away. But for the most part, most of the black population in Raleigh lives in Southeast Raleigh. But it's changing. And the places where people who can not afford to own their own homes has gone is out to the outer edges where there isn't transportation. So all the transportation stuff that's being built along downtown Raleigh out is literally for white people because most black people can't afford to buy $500,000 homes up. I certainly can't. I'm retired. I can't. And most people I know can't. Some can, but that's a few. That's not a lot. And, they don't hear any of that. They don't want to hear any of that. And to call people names because they disagree with you. I mean, finally they said, oh, you must be part of Livable Raleigh. Well, I'm not. I don't belong to Livable Raleigh. I'm not even on their mailing list. But sometimes they do ask me if they can reshare a blog that I have written. And I say, okay, because I don't mind people hearing what I have to say. But it just pisses me off that we have become such a community in the larger, broader sense of people who don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. Just the fact that you don't agree with them automatically means that you're wrong. The spirit of compromise or lack of thereof that we have seen in Washington, D.C., is because the same people from the community get elected. And so that doesn't change. And it just pissed me off today. I've heard all I want to hear. And so I'm sharing that with you because I have yet to go back and share with them how I feel about um, them hammering at me and giving me economics classes like I never took any at NC State. No, I didn't pass them, but I took them. I know the basics of supply and demand. And for somebody to say that it's okay for the fact that people who can afford more and don't want to spend it or don't want to spend as high as they could to push people out because they don't understand that's what they're doing, who can't afford to buy at all in order to get somewhere to stay, that's not right to me. And I can't make a developer build affordable housing. I can't make their conscience, even if they call themselves a Christian or good people, say, okay, I've built 10 or 12 houses and made good money off of that. They can move to a place where they have a lot of yard, where they have a lot of land. They're not living in a townhouse or a condominium or a micro unit apartment that is only 360 to 500 square feet. They're living in a big house where there's room for them and their kids. And I don't know of any developer that's living in a little tiny space in Raleigh, in South Raleigh. There might be some, but I don't think there are. So I don't see where they're coming from, and it doesn't have to be that they get an incentive to build some affordable housing. If you can put 2 or 3 or 4 micro units in your apartment complex or your condo complex, you can do that without not making any profit. I know that. I'm not that stupid. So, sometimes people need to think. And maybe you're not like me. Maybe you don't mind having large developments in your backyard, side yard, front yard, or whatever. But I noticed that for the BRT, from Tarboro Road back to the Capitol, you're not going to see any affordable housing, not micro units or any other kind, because there aren't any there now, and there's no space to build some. So the only space you're really going to see that is the area from Raleigh Boulevard to Milner Memorial, which is where the county, the city, DIC is planning to put some affordable housing. I have heard nothing about affordable housing along the New Bern Avenue corridor for the BRT. And if you hear something other than the hotels that are out by Walmart, please let me know, because I want to know. I want to know that. I want to be able to encourage those developers who are stepping out and doing that kind of work when that's what this corridor is supposed to be, the missing middle. And part of that middle includes low income, because that's who was already here before all this pushback came. That's all I got to say. I can't wait to hear your comments. Thanks. Bye.